Thank you. Good morning. We're going to throw 4 different shapes of tasting cup, or tasting cup is just my word, small cups that you might drink alcohol or little tastes of wine or orange juice or something like that. Something that you don't drink tons and tons of. We're going to throw 4 different shapes and we're going to see what people like the best. So you're going to center the clay. Going to open it up here. Add a little bit of a bottom. A lot of people make the mistake of just sort of starting walls from no bottom at all. That doesn't work as well. Compress the bottom a little bit with a rib. Oops, it's not quite wide enough yet. A little wider. If you don't compress the bottom, you risk cracks across the bottom where it cracks on the throwing rings. It's called nest crack. So you gotta kind of pay special attention to the bottom so that it doesn't do that. Doesn't do that either. Fix that. There we go. All right. So this first one I'm gonna throw is kind of a short, almost bowl-shaped cup. I tend to keep them pretty short. And then I'm going to trim off this shoulder a bit. Add that little chunk there. And then what I like to do is I have a nice, very flexible rubber rib here. This red one is my favorite. It's a Mud Tools. Yeah, I really like Mud Tools. They're really nice. Anyway, this red one is very, very flexible, so you can make the wall sort of bow out smoothly and make this much prettier shape. I like it to be sort of what I think of as pot-bellied. I like to be a little bottom heavy, if anything. Right now it's a little top heavy, so I don't like that as much. I want it to be a little bigger at the bottom. There we go. I like that. And then I want this top to be just a hair taller, I think. Compress the rim. Okay, so that, we're going to call that shape A, I suppose. Little pot-bellied. These, I usually do very, very little trimming. Just enough. That's the shape. I'll show you. Sort of try and make it so you can see the whole thing like that. Okay, so we're going to set it over there. And then, I'm going to grab another bat. Sorry about the noise. And the next one we're going to throw is much more straight walled. It'll look much more like a cup that most people think of. That's a little small. We're going to use that one for a different one. So here we go. We're going to center the clay again. Get a little water on there so that don't put water on it, your hands stick to it, and then it doesn't work at all. You want your clay pretty wet while you're centering the external part. so that your hands slide around it. Cone up and down a little bit here. Flatten out the rim a little, or the top a little bit, so that we can open it up. Again, we're going to center it about the same way, kind of not too wide. And then we're going to slow down the speed here so that we're not opening at quite that pell-mell rate that we do, that I center at. So again, we're going to get down to a nice bottom, open up the bottom on our cup. And pay a little bit of attention to the bottom here, give ourselves some compression. It also tends to pull off sort of the top layer, make it a nice flat bottom if that's what you want. Okay, so this time we're going to pull the walls straight up and make a much narrower cylinder. That's the word. Pay attention to that top. Pull up at least one more time. That's not very big, very tall. I don't exactly know how much clay I start with. I sort of know about how much it should look like. I don't necessarily weigh it real often anymore. Okay, we got some height there. We're still, this time we're still going to trim off the shoulder a little bit. I really like trimming off the shoulder. It means, it's called wheel trimming, or trimming while you throw. I really prefer trimming off while I'm throwing to trimming off later, if I have a choice, because it saves time. I'm not a production potter by any means, so I don't, I'm an artist far more than I am a potter. There's my rib right there. Take my little red rib again. We're still going to round out this bottom because I don't like, it's not going to be nearly as wide though. We're going to kind of smooth it out a little bit. And we're still going to push out, but I'm not going to make it pot-bellied exactly. I kind of think of this as having an edge there, kind of. And sometimes I even make it more defined with a wooden rib, so that I have sort of an angle going on there, so that the one side, at the end, bottom, it goes in a little bit and then straight up and down. This looks like it got a little off kilter. I really like my cups to be flat across the top, so that I store almost all of my pottery rim down, like in my cupboard. And so I like people to be able to do that. So I tend to trim off the top if it's even a little bit off center. Some people, or off flat. Some people kind of like the movement on the rim. I don't really dig that, personally. Nothing wrong with it, just not my thing. I think I'm going to round that a little tiny bit more. So a little more belly going, but still more straight up and down. Kind of like that. So I'm going to call this shape B. Like that. Kind of like that. I don't know how much, I don't know if they will hold exactly similar amounts. This one's probably a little bit bigger than the first one. So, the next one that I'm going to throw, dry off that mat a little bit. stick the clay on. If you have a really wet bat or a really messy bat, the clay doesn't tend to stick real well. And it's very inconvenient when it lifts off while you're throwing. So, this one I think of as kind of a mini cup almost, without a handle. So, again, all of these kind of get centered at about the same rate, size, you know, that's about the same amount of clay. And sort of the same centering style. I tend to center sort of that height. I suppose it's about like, you know, that tall. And sort of flat on the top. Okay, so this one I'm going to open it up again. Open that up. Open out a wall, or open out a floor. So that it'll hold a little bit of stuff in it when it's done. Where's my wooden rib? Where is it? I don't see it. Okay, oh, there it is. I should really store my tools better, but I'm kind of, I don't know, I've never gotten in the habit, I guess. So here we're going to flatten out that bottom. Again, we're going to compress it a lot, so we put a lot of pressure on that so that it doesn't crack. S-cracks really are lousy, and I hate that. So I really work hard on not getting S-cracks. I like this particular rib because it has this rounded corner on it. So I like to use that as sort of the edge where the bottom meets the wall. Takes on that shape. Okay, so now we're going to pull a cylinder much like the last one. Similar kind of thing going on. Press the rib, keep it on center. Got a little wonky going on here. And then I think I'm gonna pull one more time, make it a little bit taller. Here we go. Again, we're going to trim off that brim a little bit so that it's definitely flat. I can definitely tell that that's not flat. You compress the rim again. You parts that get a lot of wear are parts that you should pay a lot of attention to. So then, I'm going to collar in just a hair. I'm going to push the rim in and down a little bit. I'm going to create sort of what I think of as a pot-bellied mug. So I'm going to push the bottom out. And then, I'm going to push the top in. So that it's sort of an hourglass shape, I suppose. Kind of like that. And often, when I do that shape, another reason that I really like this red rib is I will use this right here to shape that top bit against. So that I have a really nice sort of waist, narrow little waist to my piece. And then we're gonna, there we go, here we're gonna trim off that shoulder just a hair. This one doesn't seem to have quite as much shoulder, so I'm less worried about it. But I'm still gonna trim it off just in case. It's so much easier to trim it up now than it is to have to do it again later. Recentering and all, not my favorite bit. And these little pieces, I tend to like to keep them sort of all, to the degree that I can. I really want to just trim the bottom up. Oops, I kind of ruined the shape there. Let me try again. Luckily, clay will go back the way you had it, as long as you don't let it dry much. Do that. And then we're going to push this back in. Push it back in with that. There we go. Collar a little bit more. It came out while I was playing around with the rim. I really like a little narrow waist on this one. Push the bottom out just a hair. Push the top in just a hair. These are ones that you can sort of play with to get the shape, exactly the shape that you want. Make sure that rim is nice and round and flat. So we're going to call this one Shape C for cup. Because I always think of it as, you know, you could put a handle on that and it'd be a cute little mug, wouldn't it? Anyway, tasting glass C looks like that. And then we got one more option here. So this one we're going to do kind of almost the opposite of that last one. And this piece we're going to center a little narrower and a little higher because it's going to be a different shape than the rest. All of those sort of have a flat bottom. And this one isn't going to have nearly the flat bottom that all of those do. And it's going to sit as a much higher cup. Do not shove dog hair into your clay. It's always a bad plan. Okay, so this is going to be a taller. So you'll notice I'm centering it taller, and I'm leaving the bottom less wide. I'm not opening it up big and wide like I did the other ones, because I kind of want it to be almost cone shaped on the bottom instead of flat like the others. So now I'm going to actively push this part in so that I can pull a taller wall. I'm going to kind of aim it out here. Oops. I'm going to be careful. This one is more likely, any shapes that tend to go out are more prone to getting off center because of the force of the wheel flinging things out away from it. So you gotta be a little more careful with this shape. So then again, we're gonna push it in a little bit at the bottom. Pull up, pull the wall up. So that we still have some amount of space for drinking liquid out of, but hardly any of it's going to be at the bottom of the cup. It's going to be mostly up toward the top. Now you can make a choice here. I could either leave the bottom flared like that, which would be okay, but I usually trim it off a little bit so that it's sort of, let me use this yellow one here for a second, so that it's sort of straight up and down there, and then make sure that the wall is nice and even. And one of the things about this is that you definitely want, once you get toward the top, you're going to want to stop flaring, because if you make a really flared lip, it tends to drip. It's easier to spill as you're drinking. It's harder to drink out of. And since it's possibly a little alcohol glass, that seems like a nasty trick to play on someone who is drinking. So I tend to make sort of it, I try to make it flared as we go. And then I get about, I don't know, 1/4 inch from the top, 1/2 inch from the top, and I stop flaring it, and I tend to make it sort of flat, sort of 90-degree angle to the table, so that it will, so that the bottom and the top are both straight onto the table. Okay, words are hard some days in my life. Right angles to the table that it's sitting on. Alright, so I'm going to call this one done, and I'm going to call it shape D. And in the comments, vote and tell me which one is your favorite shape for a little tasting cup. See you next time. Bye.